even though we
Thank you.
just had a chat for a full hour before starting the live. um,
Happy to be here.
yeah, so Jupiter will be entering Taurus very soon. When is it actually? Is it on Friday? Next Friday, right?
May 16th.
May 16th. All right. So we've got 4 more days. Um, so if there are any viewers right now that do not know what the occasion of this is or sort of the context, Caity and I, did a giveaway on Instagram where you had to do a couple of things, jump through some hoops to enter our giveaway. And today we're going to announce the winner. And the winner, what does the winner get, Caity?
So we're going to be talking about the ingress of Jupiter moving into Taurus, which Jupiter is going to be in Taurus for roughly an entire year. And this is a big deal. Um, a whole different vibe change. So we are going to be giving the winner a forecast, um, personalized forecast of what to expect with Jupiter in Taurus.
Yeah, and it's also going to be live for everybody else to learn from as well, right? So there might be some snippets in there that you're like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know that. That maybe also apply to you. And as well, at the beginning, we're actually just going to talk in general for a bit about Jupiter, the transit of Jupiter and Jupiter in Taurus. So that part should also just be applicable to anyone watching. All right. Are you ready to announce the winner, Caity? I feel like we need a drum roll.
If I could do a drum roll, I would.
Right. Our winner is Christina. Congratulations, Christina. We'll get into your chart in a minute. And by the way, we have Christina's full permission to talk about her chart and to share this today. And Christina, if you're watching, feel free to disclose as much or as little as you want in the chat. You can also just remain silent the whole time. Although we would prefer if you chat to us because we like to chat. Cool. So let's talk about Jupiter a bit. I think Jupiter gets a really positive rap in the astrology world. So curious to hear from you, Caity. How do you see Jupiter? Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you. So, my background is in traditional astrology and Hellenistic astrology. And Hellenistic astrologers view Jupiter as the greater benefic, which there's a greater and a lesser benefic, the lesser being Venus, which I think is so rude because Venus is my ascendant ruler. And it doesn't
She
mean
should
that
be
it's any
greater.
less. It's no less. It's just, I think, really the size. But because of that, like you said, it's almost like an overblown, exaggerated, oh, Jupiter brings all of these gifts, which, if you think about it, that's what Jupiter is. Jupiter is all about expansion and abundance and exaggeration. And so so it kind of fits, right? I mean, what Jupiter is about is what we think about the planet, in comparison to the benefics, which is pretty funny.
Yeah.
Um, did I answer your question?
No, definitely. Yeah, I think definitely you see that with you see that with Mars as well, right? We see it as the red planet. Like the planet literally has the color red because of I'm not a planetologist. I don't know what the word is.
Yeah.
um, but
I think it's
the
iron mixed with some other things.
exactly. So literally like the dust, the surface of Mars is in itself red. So that's why we a lot of the times get this sort of fiery war association with Mars, and you also see that with Jupiter as well. I think one of the things that are sort of interesting to think about Jupiter is that it can bring a little bit of this expansion or this, maybe not a little bit, maybe a lot, good luck,
Hmm.
a little bit more like good fortune. And in a lot of ways, whichever part of your chart Jupiter is transiting through, this could mean that it's an area where you can just be, I don't know, a little bit more ballsy or a little bit more adventurous or courageous, an area where you can sort of dream bigger.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. Absolutely. If you look in your chart and find where your Jupiter sits, I think that this says a lot about where you can find a place in your life where you can find a focus on spiritual development. Jupiter is really wherever Jupiter is, Jupiter wants to be aligned with tr- whatever is right, whatever is true. Um, and Jupiter moves towards those things, whatever is true and right,
yeah,
and justice and knowledge. And in traditional astrology, Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Pisces. Um, and Jupiter is all inclusive. It doesn't discriminate. Um, and I mean, I could talk about Jupiter forever. I could talk about do you want to like keep going about what okay.
yeah, go
So
for
with
it.
um with my clients, I'll when we do talk about Jupiter, I usually talk to them about how Jupiter is, you know, knowledge.
Yeah, and it's a different knowledge than Mercury, right?
Absolutely, and
Yeah,
I'm glad you said that. And we didn't talk about this before this, so I'm curious to know what you think about that. But I how I see that is, it's like it's a higher knowledge, almost like a higher calling, almost like a divine spiritual knowledge, um, and almost like a sense of foreign knowledge, maybe. Um, what do you mean by that? I want to hear what you have to say.
no, definitely. I also think of it as like a higher level knowledge. It can be spiritual type of knowledge, especially when you look at sort of the Sagittarius. As Jupiter is the ruler of the sign of Sagittarius. But even the way I just look at it is, whereas Mercury is more about knowledge of like everyday things or more maybe like the details, Jupiter is more about zooming out,
Okay,
maybe finding patterns, maybe finding like the meaning in things, which
interesting.
doesn't have to be in a religious or a spiritual way at all. Um, that's sort of the distinction that I make between them.
Okay. I think because it is the ruler of Pisces, and with Pisces, there's like that invisible realm connection. Of intuition. It
Yeah,
includes that intuition, and I think that's where I get that like that sense of knowing,
yeah,
that feeling you get in your stomach that you know you're not supposed to go that way. Something's not right that way, so
yeah.
I'm gonna go this way. um, but Jupiter loves to spread knowledge and loves to teach. Jupiter represent in the chart represents teaching and education in general. Um, it's a very fertile planet. So Jupiter is actually a lot of times when Jupiter moves into someone's fifth house, it could represent pregnancy. Um,
You know, I
I
have
think
you know this because you've looked at my chart. My natal Jupiter is in the fifth house, just like all the time.
maybe you'll have lots of babies or lots
Yeah,
of puppies. I don't know.
and also Venus is there as well. So I am like both of my benefics are in my fifth house, and this is so funny. Maybe it's not suitable for live on YouTube. I was telling my boyfriend. Yeah, I think my children are gonna be, like, very lucky and very beautiful because I have both Jupiter and Venus there, and he just started laughing like insane.
Does he understand that language that you speak?
Yeah,
Okay. Did you teach him that language or did he already? Okay.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No,
Oh
I
man.
think one of the interesting things that at least I found interesting when I read into Jupiter in one of Stephen Forrest's books is that there's sort of like two sides of a planet, or at least that's how he talked about it in terms of a transiting planet, and he talks about like the teacher and the trickster. And
Hmm.
indeed, Jupiter as like a teacher is very much what we've been talking about now, right? Abundance and expansion and this knowing and learning. And on the other side, you have sort of Jupiter as a trickster, which can make you feel like overconfident or over egotistical to the point that are like, oh, well, things just come easily to me. Like I don't need to put any work anymore. And you let your ego inflate. Um, and that maybe you don't feel it necessarily during the transit while Jupiter is there. But I mean, Jupiter will move in about a year into another house and into another sign. So in that sense, later you might start to see that okay, that sort of overinflation of the ego is not something that's going to serve you. Have you heard about that sort of the other side of Jupiter?
Well, I've heard of, I there's two sides to everything. I mean, well, two or three depending on how you look at it, but um so we could look at it like positive qualities, negative qualities, or like light and shadow qualities.
Yeah,
Um, and if you think about Jupiter as like you'll hear a lot of astrologers say, whatever Jupiter touches, it will expand whatever it touches. Um, and so from experience, and this is kind of a not so good thing. When Jupiter, like the day or like the first couple days, and I really can't remember and I don't want to remember, but within the first couple days that Jupiter moved into Pisces the very first time, when it kind of dipped in and then went back out. In my husband's chart, Pisces is his 12th house, and which the 12th house a lot of times is associated with a place of death and spirits and um but his brother was found dead unexpectedly, and so when you look at it that way, and this was years ago or 2 years ago, um it was just very tragic, unexpected. He was a healthy, and it was like the last thing you would think.
yeah,
And the way I saw it, of course, being an astrologer, was wow, this is not what I was expecting from a Jupiter transit. Jupiter moving into his 12th house, it really did blow up his 12th house. And it's not necessarily a great, fortunate, fun feeling.
yeah,
And so, ever since that experience, I've kind of opened my mind and perspective on Jupiter and been able to really see it as okay, you know, these planets can show up in any way. It's not always good and it's not always bad, just like life.
yeah,
So, not to get too dark, but that was a personal experience that really taught me a lot about
yeah.
Jupiter.
And it's so personal as well, right? It really also depends on what is happening within our own chart. And indeed, if we already have maybe some difficult conversations happening in the 10th house, and Jupiter is sort of entering that conversation, it might amplify it. So yes, it's there are two sides to everything. But so
um,
that's a bit about Jupiter in Taurus, like this specific transit, which is happening on the 16th. And I believe it's until end of May 2024, right?
yeah.
How do you see this transit in general?
Well, just thinking about Taurus in general, Taurus is an earth sign. It is a fixed sign. So Taurus are known to be like stubborn sign of the zodiac. But I don't know. Taurus is it's ruled by Venus. And Taurus is known to, it's associated with pleasures and the senses. And I've been thinking about this a lot. And I think that there's going to be, with Jupiter moving into Taurus and thinking about our senses specifically, I think that as a collective, I think there's going to be like a collective awakening to our senses, so to speak. Like, and it may be, and I don't know how to articulate that any further. I don't know what that means, but senses in general are
Yeah.
going to play a big role in my opinion. Um
Yeah, that's very interesting because we do have Pluto in Aquarius, right? Which is about, we already start to see these topics like AI, artificial intelligence. So, in that
mhm.
sense, it does make sense that there is this need within us to, like, okay, let's remember we're human. Let's remember we have bodies that we can hear and touch and smell and taste. Like, those are things, these sort of experiences and senses that we still have no matter what happens with technology or with AI. So I can definitely see it relate in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. It's like we were talking about earlier. I feel like the social media can get so overwhelming, and I just need to kind of step away from social media from a while to remember and like come back to my own physical body and like remember my senses
Yeah.
away from the screen. And I think that's going to be so important in the next, what, 20 years? How long? I don't remember how long Pluto is going to be moving
Yeah,
through
I think
Aquarius.
about 20. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
No, definitely. I'm sort of on the same track with you thinking about Jupiter and Taurus. One of the things that I was thinking about this transit is that it's very much about um, amplifying peacefulness and calmness in a way, sort of thinking back to everything that we've experienced. We had a pandemic, we had all this stuff with recession and wars. I mean, to be granted, every generation says, oh my goodness, what is happening, this is the worst it's ever been. But I can in a way see the following year that um, there is maybe a little bit more emphasis on, well, I'm just seeking peace, like I'm just taking a vacation to detach from everything. I'm just getting rid of social media so I can just get in touch with my body. So I see indeed more of that sort of emphasis on serenity, right? And people
yeah.
can find that in many ways.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, Taurus are very calm. They like to be calm. They like to find their peace.
Yeah.
Um, for sure. We like to be quiet. And with Jupiter in Taurus, um, I think like exactly like you said, like a collective movement towards the peaceful, the peacefulness, the harmony, the coming together of, let's all just be quiet. Let's just pipe down. I'm just kidding. No, yeah,
I love it.
that's good.
Yeah. So that's the takeaway for everybody. Just be quiet for the next
Just be
year.
quiet.
I love it.
No, but I mean, Taurus is also I mean, Taurus loves food and the pleasures of life. They love great wine. They love,
Yeah.
the silky sheets. They like the classical music, the good, just, all of the good pleasures of life. They like to stop and smell the roses. They like instead of, um, I mean, my stepdad is a Taurus. My grandmother is a Taurus, and they're all about like the wine and dine. And instead of just like grabbing some cheese and crackers for a snack, oh no, they're gonna get the plate and they're gonna lay the cheese in like a little pattern on a plate and make it look beautiful. And so, there's like a very like Taurus is very detailed and um but very like calm about it and just like has a nice peaceful way about doing things.
Yeah.
So,
No, I love that. Shall we also get a little bit into sort of that shadow side? Because Jupiter can amplify and expand this
yeah,
side, I already sort of think of indeed overindulgence, um, and placing a lot of emphasis on these sort of physical things, which again, it's not bad if you have a really nice wine and dine meal. But perhaps taking a look at, are you maybe using that as a crutch or as something to lean on, whereas you're avoiding dealing with something else? That's already one way that I can think of this sort of over amplification of the shadow side.
yeah, absolutely. Gluttony, you
Yeah,
know, Taurus loves to take naps, like we talked about. I'm a Taurus rising. I love my naps and I love just relaxing. But I think sometimes there's a point where it's like, okay, you've relaxed too much. Like get up and do some laundry or something. Um, but yeah, like overindulging or
yeah,
overeating, and that becomes maybe problematic. Like you said, avoiding things, maybe addiction, and um, yeah, absolutely. That can definitely be a problem. Overspending. Taurus is associated with
yeah,
materialism. Um, and so, overspending, I think, is the big thing. I think maybe collectively talking about, and I know you're not in United States, but the United States is in, I mean, our debt is huge, uh, the highest it's ever been, and
yeah,
so that's a huge problem that is up right now. There's a lot of money issues and topics that are going around, like uh, talking about loans and school loan forgiveness, talking about even what's it called, like Bitcoin and different forms of payment,
yeah,
especially with Uranus in Taurus. Uranus is like that change. And so when Jupiter moves through Taurus and finally meets Uranus, it's going to be really interesting to see kind of how that plays out too.
yeah. I should have looked up the date for that. That would be interesting to know. Probably somewhere in the
I
fall
can find
or something.
Yeah, here. Jupiter and Uranus. Let me look. April 20th of 2024. 4/20/2024.
Okay. So right before, yeah, right towards the end of the Jupiter and Taurus
Yeah. Yes,
Interesting.
and they're going to be conjoining at 21 degrees and 49 minutes, right on my ascendant, which is great. So
I'm
that's
excited for you.
fun.
Cool, awesome. So shall we get into Christina's chart, or is there
Yeah,
anything final you want to say about Jupiter and Taurus?
I think we've covered it.
Cool. Yeah, so I think for those watching as well, one thing to take notice is that um, each astrologer has a different perspective when reading a chart, which makes it super unique and super fun, especially as the two of us having a conversation together as well and being like, oh, how do you see it? But also because I am more educated in the evolutionary astrology, whereas Katie with the traditional astrology. And in that sense, I also use, maybe this is way too technical for those watching that are maybe new to astrology. I use a different house system than Katie does. So in that sense, hopefully, it's also interesting for you to see that there could be many. I don't want to say answers, many interpretations
Yeah.
of a birth chart as well. Just a disclaimer before going in. Cool. So Jupiter will be in Taurus, in Christina's chart, this will be in the 11th house. Do you want to speak a little bit more, Katie, as to how that might manifest for Christina?
Sure. So if you are using a whole sign chart, just to kind of picture, and I can't remember if you said this, Amelia, but we do have full permission to use and talk about Christina's chart. And she is a Cancer rising. So she has Cancer in the first house, which puts Taurus in her 11th house. So all the action that we're going to be discussing is really going to be focused on her 11th house. And 11th house is it's a good place. The 11th house is known as a place of community. The 11th place or 11th house is known as a place where you can find groups of people in social settings that support the same ideas and visions that you hold, and a great social network that you can really can maybe advocate towards things together, or um, how do I put it? You you share the same vision, we'll just say that. And also the 11th house is known as a place of benefactors. So you might have, for example, in the 11th house, you could find very meaningful and important relationships that help you get to wherever it is that you want to get to. So, Jupiter next week is going to be moving into Christina's 11th house of this place of community and social networking. And so, because everything we just talked about with Jupiter being this ultimately benefic planet that expands wherever it moves into, hopefully, right off the bat, we think that Jupiter moving into this place is going to expand Christina's world of social community, right? So, over the next year, Christina is going to see her social world really flourish, and she's going to have a lot of opportunity to meet new people and important people that she aligns with. That's just like a brief synopsis of how we can interpret it.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think it's also really interesting to look at the 11th house as a sort of progression after the 10th. So with the 10th house, we're looking at your public image, right? Which a lot of the times is our career, but a lot of the times it can also be things such as who we're married to or our relationships, because a lot of the ways how others perceive us is through that relationship that we have. Um, so seeing sort of a person progress through the 10th house, where maybe the focus was more on how others perceive them or how they come across, what is their image to the outside world. Coming sort of into the 11th house, it's in a way a little bit sort of closing off that cycle and maybe refining
Yeah.
this sort of expansion of the public image, refining it and saying, wait a second, like, where are my values? Where are my commitments? And can I indeed, like you said, find my community, find my friends that actually align quite close to me? That it's not so much about um, necessarily like image or I don't
Mhm.
know. It's not so much about quantity, but a little bit more about quality. At least that's sort of how I compare that transition from where Christina's focus might have been in the 10th house and what it will sort of transition to into the 11th.
I think all of that is so on point. Absolutely. And I agree with that perspective with looking at the 11th house as kind of like a reflection.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so she just came out of this expansion of like working on her image or what she's doing in her life, right? And she's kind of moved past that a little bit, and she's kind of looking back and figuring out okay, what did I do in that period and how do I want to refine that, like you said? And
Yeah.
I feel like, not to jump ahead too much, but as soon as Jupiter moves into Taurus, can we go there yet?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. As soon as Jupiter moves into Taurus, it's going to be making a square, which is a 90-degree angle from our perspective on Earth. It's going to be making a square with Pluto, and Pluto's in Aquarius. So Pluto is in Aquarius at 0 degrees of Aquarius, and Jupiter will be at 0 degrees of Taurus. And this square is almost like a clash of energy. It's almost like it's going to bring something. It's going to make something happen. Um, but because Pluto is very slow moving, it's almost like it's definitely going to take time. It's not an overnight change. But I feel personally like we're all at this point where we're kind of all in this reflection mode. And we're all at this point where, you know, that saying, I don't really know if Einstein actually said it, but there's, like, quotes that claim that he said it, where if you repeat the same thing over and over and expect different results, that's
Mm,
the definition of insanity.
yeah.
I feel like we're all at this point collectively where it's like, okay, we keep kind of coming to the same sort of thing, and we're finally starting to, like, break those cycles and really step into this new version of ourselves. And so with respect to Christina's chart, I feel like this is a great opportunity for her to step into this Jupiter and Taurus era. And when she steps into this group or community, when she finds herself around these new people, she really needs to ask herself, you know, are these my people? Are these the people that I feel uplift me and support me? And do I feel that they're putting in as much as I'm putting into them? Is this like is it reciprocated?
Yeah.
You know? So that's just kind of what I'm getting with that there.
No, definitely. I think one of the other things I noticed with Christina's chart is that the progressed Mars will be squaring her Sun. Um, and I think that sort of fits with what you were just saying now. Just give me a second to get there. um, I see that she will be putting a lot of energy indeed into her friendships, but having the Mars in the 12th house, I I also see this sort of maybe tendency to find friendships that are maybe enabling self-destruction, because sometimes the 12th house can represent those types of habits. So indeed it fits with what you were just saying, to really reflect on, are these friendships that really serve me? Are these friendships really that benefit me? And I think, especially because Mars is sort of in conversation with her Sun during this time with that square. There's also this need for her to be like brave and assertive, right? To really put on her warrior cap on, and to be okay, if, because her focus is on community, the way that could manifest in the upcoming year is to really be brave in stating her boundaries and in not compromising when it comes to her friendship and her community in the upcoming year. Um, and to really, because Jupiter is there, like you can become you can sort of dream more. You don't need to be so realistic. It's a really beautiful transit, because you can say, you know what, no, I want the best of friends. I want the community that stands behind me. And you can be even a little bit, I don't want to say delusional, but a little bit sort of, yeah, I'm not sure what the word is, it's escaping me, but I think you understand.
I guess maybe, well, maybe a little bit more selfish,
Yeah.
even though that's not the right word. You're not being selfish when you do whatever you want, and because you deserve to be happy, but maybe like manifest. your goals
Yeah,
and envision what you want and make them happen and make them real, because Taurus is making things real.
exactly.
Um, but it's funny that you said setting boundaries and you also said imagining things, because you had mentioned that Christina's natal sun, which is at 25 degrees of Pisces,
Yeah.
is in a place where, because right now Neptune is at 27 Pisces. So her sun is um getting conjoined by Neptune and this sun Neptune conjunction up in the sky. And so Christina's ideal image of herself is basically getting affected by Neptune. And when you said boundaries, Neptune's really dissolves boundaries. And so it is going to be important for her to identify where she needs to put boundaries in her life, especially with finding or making friends or being in social settings. It's going to be really important.
No, definitely. Yeah. And there with Neptune, you see also that tendency to escape, right? Because Neptune can sometimes want to, it can be quite sensitive and quite feeling. So it can want to sort of escape the reality. And I can imagine that, especially with not only is Jupiter in her 11th house, but this is her 11th house perfection year as well. So because her focus is in community and friends, that perhaps that tendency to escape is through community and friends. Perhaps that tendency comes through attending the parties that you're there and you're sort of like, what am I doing here? These are
That
not
is
my
such a good
people.
point. Yes, such a good point. Yeah. If you're going to spend your time around people, make it worth your while. If you're going to be around people, make sure you're learning something. Make sure you're around people that give you, that pour into you, and like, don't waste your
Yeah.
time. Time is so precious. Don't waste your time.
No, definitely. I think one of the interesting things that I also saw in Christina's chart was that the progressed moon is actually in Libra in her fourth house. And that's a really interesting placement, especially talking about all of this focus on community and friends, because Libra can very much be about this compromise, right?
Yeah.
Seeing the side of the other person. You always understand the other side, both sides of the story. But seeing it sort of in the 12th house, one of the things that I would indeed encourage Christina is to just not be afraid to reflect, because the fourth house can be quite personal, right, and quite more inwards house. To just go back to sort of what finding that balance inwardly as well, right?
Mhm.
Even seeing Libra there, the sign of Libra, one of the ways that could help her get in touch with her inner world and her priorities and her values could be through Libran type of activities, right? Could be through reading poetry or going to an art exhibition. I don't know what other, what do I have? Quality, grace. Those are some of the things that I wrote down for Libra. So perhaps if this following year is feeling like, oh, maybe I'm compromising, or maybe I'm not stating my boundaries enough in my community and my friendships, that could be a way that could allow her to come back to herself as well.
That's a great point. Yeah, it's cool how you can just in generally speaking, it's cool how
Yeah.
you can use the chart like that. Like, you can, no offense to the chart, but you can use the chart like, just it's just, I just love astrology. But yes, that's so great. So, and Libra is that relational sign.
Exactly.
And it's interesting because, and I always want to I always want to talk about the opposites. We always have to include the
Hmm.
opposites. So with the 11th house, the opposite, or the neighbor across the street, is is the 5th house, and the opposite of, or in opposition to Taurus, is Scorpio. And if you notice in her chart, she has Pluto in Scorpio. And so all of this is happening in opposition to her natal Pluto. And I mean, that in itself is huge. I mean, this is a really big, this is just, I think this is a huge, this Jupiter transit over this next year is just a really, really big transformative time for her. And I'm excited for her. I think this is going to be a good thing, especially with the focus on, if we focus on Jupiter in traditional astrology, we like to look at the sect light, and Christina was born in the daytime, and that means that Jupiter her um is the planet that brings her the most luck, so to speak. And so with Jupiter moving through the 11th house, and um in 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 the yeah, I just think this is going to bring some good things for her. I'm excited, and I think that she's going to have a lot of dynamic and interesting, and find a lot of dynamic and interesting relationships as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think touching on relationships, it could also be interesting to talk a bit about Venus.
Oh yeah.
Because I know one of the things that Christina also brought up to us is a little bit of interest into sort of relationships and what that could look like for her in the upcoming year. And what I noticed specifically is that progressed Venus entered Taurus, entered her 11th house in 2022.
Okay.
I don't have exactly actually until when it will be there. I believe because it's a day for a year, so it should be around 30 days, right? How long is a Venus transit in a sign?
um 4 weeks, maybe 3 to
4 weeks,
4,
yeah.
4-ish weeks,
Yeah, so about 30 days.
unless it's retrograde.
Yeah. So this is really interesting because she also has the planet of Venus in her 11th house, or the progressed Venus in her 11th house. So
Ah,
start to see a lot of 11th house emphasis for Christina.
do you
Um,
think maybe she could find like a love interest in this group setting, or
Yeah,
some
I
love
think it's
vibes?
possible. Yeah, especially seeing Venus there. And I think what also really comes up for me, having the sort of highlight of Libra and Venus, is what you mentioned at the beginning. Is I forget what you called them, but did you call them beneficiaries?
Benefic? Greater
Uh,
benefic or benefic?
no, like people that sort of help you out when you sort of ask for assistance, and people can really sort of help
Oh,
along your way.
oh, um, I'm just drawing a blank. I know I
It's all
said
right.
it, but
It's all right. No, so that's what I would also really encourage Christina in the upcoming year to also
I'm
really
drawing.
use her community and her friendships to just ask for help and for assistance, right? Uh,
Yeah,
because in a way, our friendships are also about a give and take, right? There is something that we can give to our community and something that they give to us. And you know,
benefactors.
thank you.
Sorry.
So I was close.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. It's been a long week. Oh my
No
gosh.
worries, no worries. Yeah, so I think yeah, seeing Libra and Venus there, that's really what I get to not be afraid to ask for assistance and to really
Yeah,
look at it in the sense that it is a relationship, it is a
yeah,
give and a take, especially
Yes.
with that conversation that we were talking about Mars and setting your boundaries.
Mhm.
Not to forget about yourself in these relationships.
That's such a good point. Such a great point, actually.
Cool. Anything final you sort of want to add about Christina's chart?
It's interesting that, and we definitely don't have to talk forever about this, but it is interesting that the North Node is going to be changing into her 10th house.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's been in her 11th this whole time, and it's going to be moving into her 10th. So, not exactly sure what that means. You probably would more so than me because you're evolutionary astrology. Um, but I don't know. I mean, do you have any interpretation on that, especially in, with everything going on in her 11th?
Yeah. Yeah, I think just sort of on the spot because I totally didn't prepare this question. The way I sort of think of the North Node is it can present a little bit of a struggle. The North Node sometimes can be a tendency that we need to develop that we're not as comfortable with.
Mhm.
So, whereas the South Node, the opposite, is an energy
Mm,
that we're much more comfortable with, it comes more natural to us. So, already
mhm,
sort of thinking about that, you could even say, I'm interested to hear from Christina if that sort of community and friendship house was maybe something that was, I don't want to say a struggle, but something that wasn't so natural or that required a little bit more conscious movement, conscious decisions and energy to sort of develop her friendships, develop her community. And I sort of see that sort of switch with the North Node going into her 10th house and the Jupiter going into her 11th, that perhaps maybe she also starts to feel a switch of, okay, now maybe my community, my friendships, that sort of part of my life is a little bit more, comes with ease, that I don't need to necessarily expend as much energy into it.
that I love that interpretation. It's like hopefully over the next year, her environment, the people she's around, just kind of the right people flow to her naturally, and she feels comfortable. She feels like she's just, in the right place, in the right setting.
Yeah.
And maybe it's going to take some work to get to where she needs to be, but with these people supporting her, she'll be just fine.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Bringing back that sort of Libra and Venus, right? That
Yeah.
it's a balance. Like they support you and you support them, and yeah, um, a really important aspect. Seeing that Mars there, I'm like, be courageous
Fight.
with boundaries, Christina, please.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, if you don't have anything else to add with the chart, um,
I think we have covered the majority and then some for this one.
yeah.
I feel good. I feel good about it.
And I mean, it can be really fun, right? Like, I don't know, having like Jupiter in your 11th, it's a more fun transit to have, I think, than some other ones.
Oh my gosh. I mean, Jupiter alone is um, good fortune, and the 11th house is known to bring gifts and gains, and um, I mean, yeah, it's a great transit to have. I think on the flip side, the only thing I would watch out for is to watch your ego. Don't let Jupiter inflate your ego. Don't let Jupiter, you know, um, don't let Jupiter, like float you away and like stay grounded. That's that Taurus energy. Stay
Yeah.
grounded, stay humble, and yeah. So
No, definitely. That's one of the shadow sides that we talked about. Christina, I'm so happy you could jump in anyways.
yes, that's awesome. You'll
No,
have to go back and watch it.
yeah. That's one of the things that we talked about with the shadow sides of Jupiter, right? At the beginning. that indeed there can be a tendency that Christina says, okay, I'm so popular. I don't know you, Christina. Perhaps you're nothing like this. But I'm so popular, like everybody loves me, and then you really forget to ground into that sort of like, what do I need from
Yeah.
my community, and what do I want, right? That it's not about the popularity, or this sounds like Christina's a high schooler. I'm pretty sure she's not. Um, the popularity or the parties that you're invited to, right? That it's deeper.
Mhm.
Than that. It's deeper than that for Christina in this transit, I think.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks for joining me, Katie. This was really fun, and we actually
I
had like
know.
a really nice flow, I think.
I think so too. We should totally do this again. I think that
Nice.
with your perspective and like the different way of looking at it, you're so welcome, Christina. um, but yeah, like the way that you look at the chart with your different house systems and with the progressions and with my house systems and the
Yeah.
traditional view, I think it actually was better than I expected. So,
Nice. Nice.
yeah.
Great. Well, let's take a look at, I don't know, next big transit coming up, and we can do another giveaway.
Absolutely, I'm here for it.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Christina. I hope it helped. And yeah, for anybody also just watching this after the live, just as a playback, I hope you enjoyed Jupiter and Taurus. Check out Katie's channel. She posts videos as well here on YouTube. And I also have posted already a meditation for Jupiter and Taurus. So if at any point, like in the next year, you feel like, okay, I need to just figure out what is happening, you can always refer back to that meditation and just take a second to reflect. Anything final, Katie? Katie's also on Instagram. You can check her out on there, on YouTube. I'll put your links in the description, Katie.
I hope everyone enjoys Jupiter and Taurus, and just as always, just trust the stars. They've got your back.
Yeah.
And if you ever need guidance, consult with an astrologer. You got
Yeah.
two good
Definitely.
ones right here.
Yeah, I can put both of our booking links as well in the description. And I love that you said that. That's a beautiful note to close off on, because, you know, a transit shouldn't be sort of feared nor celebrated. A lot of the times it's just indeed trust, let go, and just be like, okay, whatever happens, happens, and it will be okay. Yeah, that's a beautiful note to close it on. I love it. Awesome. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you. See you next time.
Yes.